Bill Gates did it. The affairs were real. After years of denial and lies, what else was real? What do we call an affair when it involves a grown old man and a girl? In Epstein's draft emails, Bill Gates was supposed to have caught an STD from his affairs with these Russian girls. Gates denied those allegations as completely false, then admitted to them only a bit later in a remorseful apology. So Bill Gates was lying. What else was he lying about?
I had dinners with him. I regret doing that.
The first idea was to say that Gates was in it all innocent. It was just some dinners.
Dinners with him.
He never knew about Epstein's sinister character. He says he was only aware Epstein had some 18-month thing. Is that another lie? That 18-month thing was being a registered sex offender and serving time for soliciting a minor for prostitution. Everyone around Bill Gates must have known about this way before him and Epstein first met. The first contact between Epstein and Gates came indirectly through his science advisor Boris Nikolic. In 2006, Nikolic met Epstein's science advisor Melanie Walker when she got employed by the Gates Foundation as a senior program officer. Walker was connected to Epstein since 1992, and the first thing she did at the Gates Foundation was to introduce Nikolic to Epstein. The men then became friendly. Nikolic and Gates were both very close. They frequently traveled and socialized together. That's why they are also both photographed with Epstein. And it wasn't just one person. Several employees of the Gates Foundation would be visiting Epstein's properties. Epstein was arranging a charitable fund between the foundation and JP Morgan Chase, a US bank. Are we supposed to believe that from 2006 through 2011, no one from Gates' closest associates noticed that Epstein got convicted and had to register as a sex offender? And maybe this idea that Bill Gates didn't know was a lie? If so, what else did Bill Gates lie about? So it wasn't just dinners with him.
Dinners with him.
Now he admits to having met with Epstein in his private jet, in Germany, in France, in New York, in Washington, but he says he never spent any time with the victims, the women around him. That's a direct quote. Is this also a lie? This woman is Eva Anderson Dubin, former Miss Sweden and a very devoted girlfriend to Epstein, and a not so devoted wife to hedge fund billionaire Glenn Dubin, himself somehow also a friend of Epstein's. Epstein dated Eva Dubin for a long time when he and Gates met for the first time in Epstein's townhouse on the Upper East Side. This woman accompanied the two men during their late-night stay. So if Bill Gates says he never spent time with the women around Epstein, that is now a certified lie. Now what else is a lie? Bill Gates says, quote, "I did nothing illicit. I saw nothing illicit," end quote. Now this is Selena Dubin, the daughter of Eva Dubin, who also stayed at Epstein's townhouse during Bill Gates' first meeting with the convicted
PDF file.
On that night, on January 31st, 2011, Selena Dubin was only 50 years old. What was a 15-year-old doing in a
PDF
house with a 55-year-old billionaire and the said
PDF file.
You can speculate, or you can hear it from Bill Gates directly because he bragged about this to his colleagues the very next day. Quote, "A very attractive Swedish woman and her daughter dropped by, and I ended up staying there quite late." End quote. What do you think is being insinuated here? Let's be all adults. You think that just because her mother was there, she would never allow anything bad to happen? So a girlfriend brought her 5-year-old child to the house, and Bill Gates' instinct is to brag he ended up staying there quite late. Do you think it's too far to assume that the mother would put her daughter to a convicted? What if this wouldn't be the first time? When Selena was staying in her Colorado home in August 2010, her mother invited Epstein over with this message, quote, "Come and visit next week. Selena will have 5 friends over," end quote. What parent invites a registered child offender to spend time in their house specifically because their 15-year-old child is there with her friends? The kind of a parent that is okay with the fact that that parent wanted to marry her daughter. The kind of a parent that her children to that pedophile. You should know that young Selena would call Epstein Uncle Jeff. That's how familiar they would be together. And in return, Epstein said he desired to marry the 15-year-old. The meaning of that desire was probably cemented in the fact that Selena Dubin was named a contingent beneficiary in Epstein's trust. Put yourself in Bill Gates' shoes for a moment. You visit a pedophile in his own house, you find a year old child in there, and you think there's nothing illicit about that? Bill Gates felt the need to brag about that to his colleague the day after. I think we all know why. So, what else is a lie? Epstein wanted to blackmail Bill Gates over his affairs with these Russian girls that allegedly gave him an STD. But something doesn't add up here. Who were the Russian girls? Bill Gates admits to 2 affairs, one with Russian bridge player Mila Antonova. They first met in around 2010, which would be before Gates' official first meeting with Epstein. So how and why would Epstein know about that affair before they even met? The first time Epstein met Mila Antonova was in 2013, under weird circumstances where Gates was supposed to pay for Antonova's software coding school, but somehow Epstein ended up footing the bill and then asked Gates for reimbursement. Weird stuff, but Antonova also met with Gates' science advisor Boris Nikolik at Epstein's townhouse. And now I wonder if that meeting had also similar vibes as usual with Epstein. Media says that Antonova was a woman in her 20s when she met with Gates. I couldn't verify her real age anywhere, but in this picture with Bill Gates, I don't know if I would pin her in her 20s. Even so, a woman in her 20s is no girl. The other Russian woman Gates admits to having an affair with was a nuclear physicist who worked in one of Gates' companies. This wouldn't be the first time for Gates. Bill Gates was known to have been chasing women that were his subordinates. That's how he groomed Melinda, as she used to be his employee too. It's also why Bill Gates lost his seat at Microsoft. But to the point, a nuclear physicist is no girl either. That's what's so weird about this. Epstein in his draft emails about Bill Gates is talking about not women. Is Bill Gates suggesting he got an STD from either of the nuclear physicist or the bridge player? Or were there some other girls we don't know about yet, and this admission and damage control apology is just an attempt to set the narrative? We know Epstein's sex pedophile ring involved trafficking girls from Eastern Europe and then serving them to Epstein's clientele of wealthy and influential elites. Why would Epstein refer to women in their 20s as girls? We could say it's possible because Epstein was no feminist. Or when we hear a talk about girls, we should believe him, he really means girls and not women in their 20s.
I had dinners with him. I regret doing that.
Why are you so nervous, Bill Gates? Rubbing your missing wedding ring? Are you hiding something? This was an interview from September 2021. Look at how he reacts when the journalist keeps pressing him about how long Gates has been in touch with Epstein.
You continue to meet with him over several years. And
you see that? That very pronounced and clear head shake? The moment he does that, the interviewer stumbles, as if she was giving a signal to tamp down a little bit.
In other words, a number of meetings. What did you do when you found out about his?
Bill Gates doesn't like to be pressed by the media. I mean, who does, right? And I think he's trying to micromanage what the journalist is allowed to ask him. As a tangential example, he does that to a journalist in a Washington Post interview. And there, he has a media manager to jump in, taking over editorial control over what a news outlet is allowed to ask Bill Gates.
Do you seriously think that the reason I like the Common Core is for some self-interested reason? That's what you're saying.
No, I don't know that I believe that, and you
don't know. You don't know?
I don't think that I believe that. I don't.
His CNN interview is exactly what a manufactured narrative looks like.
It's just on a personal level, how are you doing? And I think it's no one's business what happens in a person's marriage. Do you have regrets? Just on a personal level, I'm sorry for what you and your family are going through.
I had several dinners with him.
Bill Gates has somehow successfully managed to control the narrative for so many years. The fact that he bragged about staying with a 50-year-old child at Epstein's townhouse, that wasn't a new revelation. That was reported by the New York Times in 2019. That's exactly the time Melinda Gates hired a divorce attorney. Coincidence? I don't think so. Does she know something but is afraid to say it? Or can't say it? Somehow, nobody has ever pressed Bill Gates on the fact he stayed with this 50-year-old child. How is this even possible? This is one of the biggest admissions we got from the Epstein files. It was one of the first stories ever to be broken about Epstein's most elite connections. In my video essays, I always go deep to highlight a problem, and I always try to suggest solutions. I'm just going to post this meme here I found on Lemmy, some open source alternative to Reddit. Just contemplate on that a little bit, please.
You're saying our problem is civil disobedience. That is not our problem. Our problem is civil obedience.
World governments have failed to uphold justice and people's rights. We are talking about violations of human rights and the Geneva Conventions. The consent of the governed has been completely torn apart. The social contract is meaningless. The justice system is not working. Trump-appointed investigators and prosecutors are refusing to investigate and prosecute. We can't rely on the system to correct itself. If the justice system does not deliver justice, then people should step in to fix it. Being polite to these elites doesn't work. They act exactly as if they thought they can get away with everything. everything, because they are getting away with everything. So it's time to stop being polite.
Our problem is civil obedience.
All we have to really do is to just stop doing everything we are doing. No violence, no threats. Just simply stop. It's called a general strike. What we need is a global general strike. Workforce of all the free peoples of planet Earth united in solidarity. For the victims, for justice. I can't go too deep into this here on YouTube, so follow me on my Patreon podcast for more detailed info and analysis. I am done being polite.